Hello people, I am Jaby KOAY, joined by ACHARA KIRK.
Hi guys.
We're looking at a trailer, and forgive me, I'm going to try my best to pronounce this. KHANDAANI SHAFAKHANA, and it stars Sonakshi Sinha, Badshah, and Varun Sharma. It's directed by Shilpi Dasgupta. So, here we go. Let's check this out.
मामा जी ने जितनी मैरिजें खुशहाल की है ना, ये बात या तो मामा जी जानते थे या उनके पेशेंट। मामा जी ने अपना खानदानी शफाखाना बेबी बेदी के नाम लिख दिया, लेकिन आपको 6 महीने के लिए ये क्लिनिक चलाना होगा।
मुझे इसे आईडीए मेरे और क्लिनिक इसका,
और क्लिनिक में तेरे आईडीए वर्जित हैं।
देखा, सब लोग मुझे वर्जित समझते हैं, इसीलिए कहता हूँ मेरी शादी करा दो। नहीं करना। छोटी की शादी करा दी, बड़ी के पीछे पड़े हो। किसी को ख्याल नहीं आता घर में जवान लड़का कुंवारा बैठा है।
क्लिनिक बेचेंगे, मोटा पैसा आएगा,
पूरे 1 करोड़। 1 करोड़?
चंडीगढ़ पीछे सारा लौटे तू।
So goofy.
पागल हो गई क्या? लड़कियों के मुंह वाले क्लिनिक जाएगी?
फैशन करके। 3 Why should patient honor our clinic with their presence? Why patient hiding from us? Why they not talk about sickness? Why you looking so lost?
4 बार हो गई जी।
क्योंकि सेक्सुअल डिसऑर्डर बन गया है गुप्त रोग और सेक्स हो गया है गुप्त ज्ञान।
5 फुट तलवार के पीछे लड़के 6 फुट।
वो क्या है ना, मामा जी डेली रिपोर्ट बनवाते थे। टाइमिंग की कितनी देर लगी फारिग होने में।
बच्चे और बच्चों के पापा
विगल
मेरा स्पर्म सैंपल
टूट गया, हथियार रोक पे आ जब टूट गया।
पहलवान की इतनी पतली टांग। Bring that back.
पूरी दुनिया में 17% आबादी वाले हम, और बात तो ऐसे करते हैं जैसे 130 करोड़ लोग प्रसाद वाले केले खा के पटक हुए हैं। हमें मामा जी के इलाज घर घर तक पहुंचाने। प्रॉब्लम ये है कि लोग सेक्स के नाम से ही कतराने लग जाते हैं। कुछ ऐसा करना होगा कि लोग खुद ही सेक्स के बारे में बात करने लग जाएं।
पंजाब की 2 ही चीजें फेमस हैं, पटियाला पैग और गबरू का टैग।
Gabru.
आपने कह दिया बात तो करो तो सब सुनेंगे।
ये मेरी और खानदानी शफाखाना की दोस्ती पब्लिक होगी ना, तो आपका फायदा हो ना हो, मेरा नुकसान जरूर हो जाना।
हाँ जी, तो मैं भी सेक्स को सेक्स ही कहती हूँ।
Go girl.
ये ज़बान नहीं,
मर्द की ज़ुबान है
ना, ये मर्द की ज़बान तब बनेगी जब इसे मामा जी की दवाई मिलेगी।
Very confused by that.
Wow.
This is a challenging story, like, I think, to get off the ground. I'm surprised it even got made.
Yeah.
Because it's dealing with such a taboo subject matter, and it's very overt about it. I mean, here in the States, I feel like it's easier to get away with this kind of story, and it's not so racy. It's like, oh, what's the big deal? You know, I feel like a movie like this could get away with being like PG-13, and it's like, whatever. It wouldn't be rated R, for sure.
No, and
Because-
I don't even know if this is like R-rated territory.
I mean, for India, I feel like it's potentially very racy.
Yeah, I think the subject matter is certainly racy.
Right, and so by India's standards, I think it could be rated R. You know what I mean? You guys would have to let me know in the comments. I'm taking a wild guess here. It has a startling number of downvotes for what it is. I mean, the votes are still far more in favor of the video. It's at 123,000 up and 13,000 down, but that's still 13,000 down. And I'm watching and I'm like, I don't understand why it's 13,000 down unless one of two things: you don't like the sense of humor, or you don't like the subject matter. And I would imagine it has a lot more to do with the subject matter than the sense of humor.
Right.
Because what's that movie we watched with Anil Kapoor and Ajay Devgan? We didn't watch the movie, but it was in theaters, and it was just like it was just like a mad world. It was like,
that one.
yeah. You guys know what I'm talking about. It was like the 3rd installment.
Jamal?
Yeah.
No,
I don't.
was that?
It doesn't matter. They know what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is that humor is basically like this, but crazier, and that was wildly popular. And so I don't think the downvotes have anything to do with the sense of humor.
Right.
At least the goofiness of it. I think the downvotes have more to do with just the subject matter in general. People just being like, oh, that's too much for me. Like, it should, there's this fear, and I've noticed this with, we did a reaction a while back to Y films.
Oh, yeah.
Where the couple hooked up like on the first night and they were getting married. I remember comments on that and people getting upset about that, if I recall correctly, because they're like, oh, this is like teaching the youth the wrong way. And, the more conservative comments, and I understand where people are coming from, but I do think the subject matter that's being approached here is important because even though we are more liberal in the States when it comes to the films that we do, I feel like the discussion is still difficult to approach.
Yes.
It's still not the easiest thing to get into talking about with your partner or with friends or whatever.
Yeah.
So
I think the States is still relatively conservative when it does come to matters of sex.
yeah.
Yeah.
So as far as my personal take, I do appreciate a balance. I'm not someone who's like, I might make jokes sometimes, but I'm not someone who's like super, super liberal when it comes to discussions of the sex, right? Even for someone like me who loves Friends, the TV show, like I had a hard time sometimes because like it's a very sexual show in terms of the humor. And so for me, like it was one of those things I had to accept watching it, but it wasn't my favorite aspect of the show. You know me better than most people, and it's like, so you can speak to what I'm talking about. Like,
Yeah.
I'll talk about this particular subject matter, but it's not always the easiest thing. And I think that in the States, sometimes we're getting way too liberal about it, even with like our music and stuff like that, in our TV shows. I think that we could dial it back a little bit and be a little bit more conservative. And I feel like there's a happy medium to be struck there, unless your movie is like very overtly about that, which this is. It's talking specifically. I know I'm kind of like.
It's okay. Go ahead.
I'm sort of hogging. I'm
say
hogging.
your piece. Say your piece.
I'm bogarting the mic over here.
I'm just gonna drink some tea.
Well, this film is specifically talking about the difficulties of discussing this particular subject. And so that makes it okay for me. And that makes it accessible for me. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not into toilet humor. I'm not into, gutter humor, like what occupied a large part of Knocked Up and stuff, and movies like Judd Apatow makes that are supposed to be smart humor, but to me it's very raunchy still. And so yeah, I'm into this, is what I'm ultimately trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that the jokes are too overt. Like, they've got some cute little sort of innuendo jokes, and I think the character that Varun Sharma is playing is very cute. Like, he always does that kind of bumbling, funny, offbeat, goofy guy really well. I think a lot of the issue here is not just because it's about sex, but it seems like the clinic is mostly dealing with a male clientele. So it's probably talking
Is that
about...
how they say it in India as well? Over here we say clientele.
Oh.
Okay, well go ahead.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
Because I know India's English is based on traditional England's English.
Also, my English is messed up because I've lived in so many
Okay.
different
Well,
countries.
you live in the States.
So...
You live in the States, so it's clientele.
Clientele. Yeah, so it's probably dealing with a lot of very male-centric issues, and then you've got this strong woman who's in a very male-dominated situation. Industry
Yeah.
or whatever, and she's standing her ground and being like, okay, let's talk about this. I mean, sexual health is important. Being able to discuss whatever sort of issues you might be having and being able to do that with confidence and to be able to do that without fear of being judged or laughed at, I think is really important, whether you are a man or a woman, because the subject is so taboo and oftentimes we don't talk about it. Sometimes you're like, I don't know what's normal. I don't know, if I have something wrong with me or if this is absolutely fine.
Here.
So,
Speaking as objectively as possible about this particular subject matter, because she said something interesting. She said, we're responsible for 17% of the population of the world, and
Right.
yet whenever someone mentions the word sex, we freak out.
Yeah.
I don't know how true that is. I mean, it could be very true. I'm just going to accept it as true for the sake of this conversation. What I feel like is statistically true, though, and I don't have the research to back this up immediately, but I'm taking a wild guess here, and I bet if you research it, it's pretty accurate. But communities where they find it more difficult to talk about sex and they're more conservative about it and don't openly discuss it, you often find that there are more pregnancies and potentially more diseases running around.
Right, yeah.
And so, because they're not educated about sexual protection and
Exactly.
whatnot. And so,
Family planning and all that.
right. And so what you end up is with families that have lots of babies, or you have people who are getting STDs and whatnot just because they're not educated on how to properly protect themselves and prevent against those kinds of incidences from
Right.
happening. And so talking about it more openly is important. Like, I believe that when I have a child, I'm going to actually have that discussion with them earlier on than most parents, just to make them aware of it. Because especially in this day and age with
Yeah.
the internet, you have to be the one to make your kids aware of it before the internet does, before they get misinformation and they go off of that. And then they're getting parented by their iPads or their iPhones, but instead of you. I feel like this is potentially, a really good thing to talk about and to have out there in the world. Even if it's not your sense of humor necessarily, I think that this falls in line with something like Badshah Ho.
Exactly. I was gonna say that. Yeah, totally. No, I don't mean that you're stealing my words. I'm like, yeah, it totally falls in line with that. And I think it's really interesting that there are more movies coming out in Indian cinema which are talking about subjects that are taboo or that aren't really talked about.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult, but someone's got to do it. And it's to me, these filmmakers are brave for
Yeah.
approaching the subject matter. It's not easy. We watch trailers all the time, right? It's me more than anybody else on this channel. And I can tell you that this kind of thing doesn't come up all that often. And so I think it's cool, obviously, like I said, matters that are dealing with sex is not the first place I necessarily go to, whether I'm writing or watching, as some kind of entertainment, but I do commend them for making this, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
So, you guys, do let us know your feelings in the comments below. Be honest, be kind,
Yes.
be verbose. Check out ACHARA KIRK on the social media, the Jabs if you feel like doing that, Instagram, and the Twitters. Hit the bell icon so you get notified every time we drop another video. Check out our other reactions, reviews, and short films. I'm Jaby KOAY. This is
ACHARA KIRK.
Peace out.